What's going on, world? Coming at you guys again. We got another quick video. The murder of Julio Fulio and the conviction of Sean Gathright. Let's talk about it. So, through TikTok, Sean Gathright, one of the alleged convicted murderers or accomplices of murder of Julio Fulio, is trending through the news based off of his reaction to being sentenced to, I'm not sure if it was life imprisonment or execution, and his response to having remorse and his emotional response of crying, given the scenario. And I see a lot of individuals, primarily people of color, primarily males, that are coming out speaking on this narrative as if they knew Sean Gathright, as if they knew his upbringing, as if they knew what his experiences were. Now, there's a lot of information that's come out saying that Sean Gathright was growing up, or he grew up in a privileged home. He grew up in the suburbs. He experienced things that other people did not. Therefore, his choice to become involved in such an action in which can be attributed to an immoral founding. Again, I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know why they went out and did whatever they did, allegedly. I am not in his shoes, so I'm not going to put myself in that position. But it is very interesting that we see individuals whom are coming out, whom are also people of color, whom are also black, with this sense of hypocrisy, this lack of empathy, this lack of sympathy for an individual whom they believe had every advantage in which likely they did not. I've heard statements and comments of he was light skinned, he was handsome, he was pretty, he was intelligent, he traveled to different locations, he grew up in the suburbs, he had a mother and father. All of these check the box narratives to justify their statement that, he's getting what he deserved, or, F around and find out. All of these different inhumane responses without actually knowing exactly what took place, what was going through his mind, a true encompassing and understanding of his development, as well as his mental capacity and mental bearing through his development. And it really goes to show, and I've said this before, is one of the problems that we have in our criminal justice system is we have a lack of sympathy. We have a lack of empathy. We have a sense of hypocrisy when it comes to the rule of morality when imposing sentences or punishments or punitive measures, with the agenda being primarily of holding an individual accountable and incarcerating that individual for maximum punishment. The unfortunate reality is that measure within itself is not conducive to society. Again, I've said this before. I believe yesterday there was a news article that came out of Illinois that over 250 alleged criminals were unable to be located based off of a tether or a GPS tracking monitor no longer being available. Now, the average cost to house or incarcerate an American citizen is about $50,000 a year. So for every individual, we're talking about a life sentence. You're talking about $50,000 a year for taxpayer money when we're already $39 trillion in debt. And again, this is off the basis that this individual, Sean Gathright, was 18 when this occurred. Now, I've said to you guys before, at the age of 18, the prefrontal cortex isn't even developed by maybe 50%. That's like driving a vehicle with all four tires, with no steering wheel, and expecting not to crash. The YN application for primarily people of color that grow up in poverty or they grow up in toxic environments through psychological trauma, emotional trauma, or physical trauma, which according to Sean Gathwright's grandmother, Sean Gathwright was actually exposed to from his own father. And to my understanding, Sean Gathright did not live in a harmonious household with his biological mother and father. And most oftentimes like that, individuals find themselves with abandonment issues, where they couple that with a sense of self-harm and self-hate and self-destruction. They lack the ability to look at a positive role model in which they can emulate and try to live up to. And so they find themselves within proximity of other individuals of their age or a little bit older, whom they idolize through the realities in which they are consuming every day, through music, through movies, through primary culture. And these individuals could be toxic. As I said before, you can have two pieces of fruit, one with mold, one without mold. And if you allow them to sit next to each other for a prolonged period of time, that mold will transfer over. And now both of them will become infected with mold, and both of them will rot. That's how this game plays. This is the way it goes. So when you look at the application of Sean Gathright and his sister's statements and his mother's statements and his grandmother's statements about how he was a smart kid, he never got into trouble, and other issues to where there was physical trauma, mental trauma, emotional trauma, and apparently he had to go live with his grandmother for 1.5 years because of some type of instability within the household. And you connect all of these things, well, you have a consensus to understand that this individual's prefrontal cortex and overall brain is not developing at a normal level. There's going to be some type of interference. Unfortunately, we saw it, right? We see a lot of people on the internet that are coming out saying that, he effed around and found out, or he should have known better, or this, that, and the other. But the reality of the situation, again, the guy was 18 years old. Brains 50% or less than 50% developed at that time. There's a reason why they say hindsight is 20/20. And this narrative that's being pushed out by primarily a group of individuals whom are prior criminals or prior convicted or have never been in that situation it's a concerning narrative that's being pushed out, especially if you're a person of color, especially if you're a male that's a person of color here in America. Because not too long ago, racism and hangings and Jim Crow and slavery was a real thing. And we continuously see the continued movement of disparaging, as well as a lack of empathy and sympathy for people of color in this country, to include other people of color. And it makes you really realize, and it goes back to what I said before, is we need to transition the state from holding criminal justice and prosecutions for incarceration over to rehabilitation. As the aforementioned previous warden said, that it would not be beneficial to sentence Sean Gathright to death, but to utilize him for his age and physical capacity in order to facilitate some form of work ethic because of sweat equity, which was really just some form of a nice way to say, don't kill the guy. We can use him, we can find better use for the guy, so don't kill him. But again, we're not taking the whole picture into consideration, because Two wrongs don't make it right. And an eye for an eye leaves the world blind. And we as a nation, we as a species, we are imperfect individuals. And, most often, when we come around individuals whom have a lack of sympathy and a lack of empathy, it really goes to show just how divided and morally corrupt we are as a society. And it makes you really wonder and give pause to the consideration of segregation. Is it in the best interest of America to segregate? Because collectively, when you don't have the capacity to unify based off of a form of sympathy and empathy, then you collectively come together on the basis of privilege. And living in a modern society, individuals should not be celebrating the fact that they never committed a crime, they never got convicted of a crime, or having the expectation that they've amassed or achieved so much in comparison to others. Because in a true modern and stratified society, those things don't matter, because that's a normative concept. That's not something that you celebrate because it becomes beneath you because everybody has done it. This is the transition and this is the change that needs to take place. It's time for America to have a more modernistic approach when it comes to dealing with other human beings. To expect perfection from children whose brain isn't even fully developed, utilizing a criminal justice system which is imperfect itself. Well, it's a hypocrisy within itself, man. And if you were an individual who is talking and disparaging in a negative fashion or without sympathy or empathy for an individual like Sean Gathright and other individuals like him, well, you need to take a look in the mirror, because at the end of the day, sooner or later, either you will find yourself in front of a mirror or someone you know will find themselves in the mirror. And at the end of the day, when you die, you go to your grave, and the thing that you can say that gives you the most feeling of importance is, they didn't do it to me, I didn't do any wrong. That's the wrong perspective to have. Your entire purpose here on this planet is to be a recorder for God. So when you die, all of your information transitions to God so he can make a better choice. But it is also on the basis of your actions for how you try to contribute to help your fellow man, in which you will also be judged. And if you never had the capacity to have empathy and sympathy for another individual, to try to help another individual, and the only thing you did was mock and disparage another individual based off of their shortcomings and your growth, well, technically, you're the most evil person in the room.